Chapter 4. The Yoga Renunciation of Action in Knowledge. About this chapter. Each chapter of the Gita builds upon the previous with some similarities and sometimes what may seem like completely contrasting ideas. The previous Karma Yoga chapter conversation was all about the action necessary to unite yoga with a higher consciousness for the right action to take by an individual. This chapter now goes into the discussion that knowledge is even more important than action. The transcendental secret described to Arjuna by Krishna in this chapter is about Krishna's awareness of the eternal life and eternal truths, his own existence through it all, and his present incarnation as a God-man, God in the form of man. He explains that he can take any form to help a particular era or generation of man when there is more worldly movement away from honest conduct and right actions. Basically, when the world really needs to be rebalanced in its earthly energies. Ancient scriptures expound the necessity for a need to connect with the spiritual essence inherent but not seen in our earthly realm. Krishna explains to Arjuna in this chapter that spiritual teachings have been taught by ancient sages to succeeding generations, yet no amount of learning through hearing or reading can replace the actual experience of such knowledge in action, and no meaningful experience can be fully explained in words. This knowledge and practice becomes less experienced by newer generations who may understand the theory they have heard or read, but do not fully comprehend the power through the experiential learning done through its application. Both aspects, knowledge and action, are needed for a strong foundation to truly assimilate the learning into a knowing. With weaker foundations, future generations fall more easily into the easier and quicker, short-term pleasures of actions through the pursuit of man's sense-driven natures, with ignorance and even disregard for ethical and moral conduct. When the original powerful knowledge becomes faded with the rise of materialism and negative values, some great master appears to help to lift a generation from its downward spiral of sorrow into a spiritual renewal and revival. This is the purpose of Krishna's incarnation here and has been likened to the experience of Jesus and of the Buddha. Each serve to re-establish order and connection with the divine, to direct people back to honorable lives based on compassion for all of creation. This is the purpose of what is here called the bound infinite. Krishna explains that he is here for the protection of the good, the destruction of the wicked, and for the establishment of righteousness. Here, destruction means the removal of wrong tendencies. In chapter 3, Krishna had already understood Arjuna's full attention to his dear friend. Their long friendship has also allowed for a sincere trust from both sides in this conversation. It is only with such trust, or rather faith, once clearly understood through watching Arjuna's attentive listening, that Krishna shares some of this supreme secret. Arjuna is also well read in ancient scripture through his life, so he has some understanding of this possibility from the reading and the understanding. But some healthy skepticism is expressed by Arjuna in this chapter when Krishna shares that his true existence is infinite. Arjuna knows Krishna as a human friend, yet is now being told that Krishna existed since the beginning of creation. Only during this dialogue does Krishna explain that he has had many lives before this one, and so has Arjuna, but he, Krishna, remembers them, while Arjuna does not have this sight. A few details of this chapter that are particularly important is the fact that Krishna has always known all the details that he is sharing with Arjuna, yet he is watching and listening attentively to Arjuna's responses to his words before sharing each successive detail. As a warrior, Arjuna has fought many battles, so jumping into action is a familiar and easy action for him. His initial despondency has lifted, although he is still not eager to take action, as was suggested in the previous chapter. In this chapter, when Krishna is now suggesting that knowledge is even more powerful than action, the warrior that doesn't want to fight is even more intrigued. Krishna does want Arjuna to fight, but this is where he begins to explain to his friend that the reasons for his actions must be understood before engaging in this battle. This chapter is a discourse about understanding any individual experience of hardship and how it can and does shape the experience of the people directly involved and also can reverberate a message to the entire world as well. In this chapter, Arjuna is first seen to have full trust and devotional love for his charioteer Krishna. Upon ascertaining this, Krishna shares his wisdom. Krishna has gathered that his friend is truly receptive to his knowledge. We see that a new truth to one person is an old truth to another. Here, Krishna is sharing what he has known as an old truth to receive such wisdom, and Arjuna's mind is ready to be receptive. It is also clear that scrutiny and inquiry for personal understanding is absolutely necessary in the search for truth, and answers are best received when there is an open mind and heart. Arjuna is now hearing about incarnations from a divine space that only come to help this earthly realm when significant imbalances of energies are pulling it into unethical directions. In this chapter, Krishna describes the 4 groups of people that live best according to the finer distinctions of their thoughts and actions. The gunas are described, the temperaments of sattva, which is goodness, truth, positivity, and serenity, rajas, which is passion, activity, driven, moving, and tamas, inactivity, dullness, lethargy, and darkness, which are said to color each person's mind and actions. Each person tends to one more than the other predominantly in life. Since each person has all 3, the intention is that people will be more cooperative and complementary rather than competitive with each other for a healthy society. Knowledge, him the wise call a sage. The knowledge here is knowing the purpose and goal. One should not waste the best of one's abilities with mental concerns or sentimental fears about the possible outcome of the work, as this dissipates a perfect energy in action. Imagine an artist second-guessing his or her first stroke on the canvas and beginning anew each time. An entire piece would never be completed. So a sage is ever content with his or her actions as he or she is unattached to the results, and having no selfish outcome in sight, all actions become inaction, which bring no karma, and as such incurs no sin either. The path of knowledge is beyond the world of duality, of envy, and is even-minded in success and in failure. This even-mindedness creates an ego-less man of perfection who trusts divine guidance for each action. In this chapter, it is clarified that a body gets attached to the world of sense objects. The mind becomes tangled in the world of its emotions, and the intellect gets bound with its own ideas. When the mind's desires are ended, the intellect can no longer experience likes and dislikes, competitiveness, or jealousy. This allows for a perfect instrument of divine guidance, as it is most prepared to learn the wisdom from beyond the body, mind, and intellect. Yajna can be translated into sacrifice. Historically, and even today, this is often a fire ritual, but when looked at from this chapter, the sacrifice is of the ego-based attachments, to act from a place of knowledge and wisdom. The ignorance of not knowing the higher self is sacrificed to knowing truths, which can be received or acquitted when listening with humility by those who have experienced the truth. In this chapter, knowledge is emphasized and seen as the way in which a person can discover wisdom by learning from scriptures or listening to a teacher or guru, and a spiritually evolved mystic can discover this from within themselves, armed with the tools of personal faith and wisdom. The chapter makes a strong, heavy point that an ignorant, doubting, or faithless person is lost both here in this world and also in the next, as a doubting soul cannot find happiness. Knowledge is acquired or discovered by practice. An open mind and an open heart are the strongest weapons to use in any battle. Krishna ends this conversation with Arjuna to arise, O Bharata. Bharata here means the cherished and is believed to show the love and open heart that Krishna also has for Arjuna. This chapter is focused on the idea that the right knowledge leads to the right wisdom to take right action. The right action is egoless and not attached to the fruits of the action. The mind is centered in the moment and remains steady regardless of the outcome. Chapter 4 for the Healthcare Guru. This chapter begins with the supreme secret of incarnation into a God-man that Krishna knows and his sharing of this life, death, rebirth cycle to Arjuna. Not every healthcare practitioner will have faith or belief in such an idea, but we can all likely agree that many feel they are living a repeated experience again and again in their working lives. So people wake up, get ready for their day, see clients or patients, eat their meals, and go to bed. In the day, there will be interactions with pleasant and unpleasant experiences, people, thoughts, and emotions. Most are so busy in each day that the blur of the work week comes to a conclusion only to begin another blurred week. And every so often, something happens to shake up this experience. A patient's or family member's significant life-threatening diagnosis or sudden passing, a relationship crumbling, one's own health concerns or a sense of burnout. Each healthcare worker is also juggling political changes, keeping up with new learning, and their own physical, mental, emotional, and financial stress. Occasionally, such a person will be stopped in their tracks and wonder how they can possibly move forward into one more repeated cycle of such weeks, and may stop to reassess their experience. Some may change careers, some work less hours if possible, and some even retire. Some may actually have that emotional or physical breakdown. In each of the possibilities mentioned, a window of opportunity is simultaneously open for the practitioner to reassess their own goals. In such times, the blessing of one's own Krishna in the form of a close friend or family member may appear to help guide a personal reflective time. Merely running away by changing careers or retiring from the repeated cycle will not help, as the reason is not understood and no real knowledge or wisdom is guiding the steps. In such situations, many will find themselves in very similar repeated experiences that provide the same opportunity for learning. One thing to learn from this chapter is that even when people advise as to the steps that may help an individual in this experience, the understanding and determination for doing so needs to come from a humble, open-minded, and open-hearted listener. This chapter really emphasizes this point, as many can act from a place of anger, fear, greed, or frustration. One may be angry with a coworker at changing expectations from their own job or from their associations or governing bodies. Some may be fearful of new leadership in the workplace or possible job cuts. Some may desire more pay as they compare their earnings with other similar practitioners, and many may become frustrated from the imbalance in their work-life schedules. Sometimes a manager, owner, or supervisor in a hospital or clinic may even offer a raise to someone who is thinking of leaving an overly stressful work environment or schedule. In such a situation, the healthcare worker must use the wisdom of knowing they were going to leave because of the stressful environment or schedule, not because of the pay. Yet, unless a person takes the time to understand their true needs from an ego-less space, they may push themselves to stay longer in a space that is not feeling good already. If the goal is truly financial comfort, one could stay and remember that finances are one of the experiences of duality in this world. So what is easily gained is finite and may be lost just as easily as well. and any goal can be achieved with a sincere, focused attention. This is a good chapter to remind healthcare workers to regularly reflect on their goals through their work. Hopefully, taking care of one's own health is a major focus too, which can often be forgotten by those who help others regularly. One does not need to wait for a critical moment of despair, as in Arjuna's case, to consider such things. Yet many will wait until exactly the same feeling, where it may seem as if such an awakening is the only logical thing to do in the time. Since this chapter also mentions the three gunas, this can be a good reminder for healthcare workers to look into their own natures to see if they are working for more sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic tendencies. This is the whole idea behind know thyself. And what is the goal? Has the focus of care moved away from helping patients to helping one's own financial gain, or fame, or a bigger space? Is their ego involved in this, or is this to serve patients better? Is the healthcare worker feeling more responsibility to others than the care of themselves, with the belief that just a little more time will somehow change what has not changed for many years? These are the questions that can be asked to oneself now. The most important detail from this chapter is to understand who is actually taking the right actions and from where is the right knowledge coming from. In Arjuna's case, he is getting guidance directly from Krishna. Krishna, remember, is a friend for everyone, and we can think of this as the higher self guiding each person. To first understand our own roles for patients or clients and for ourselves too is emphasized here. This can only be done when a person takes the time to listen to that inner voice that guides each of us on our spiritual journey, but needs quietude and a peaceful mind to be truly heard. Many would say their days are too busy to make such a time for themselves, and this may serve as the first red flag. There is no way to hear this voice over the chatter of our own minds filled with worries about the past and anxieties for the future. In this chapter, much is shared about understanding who exactly is bringing success to our lives. It is not the life experience that has made our bodies capable, our minds sensitive, or our intellect calculating that has resulted in any success, yet each of us could easily feel that these are the reasons for achieving our desired results. This easily moves an individual into a personal ownership of the results. This chapter is to remind us that work that is done from the clarity of understanding, that from choosing a calling into healthcare to helping ourselves or our patients in our practice, each is a gift from a higher consciousness that helps us achieve our worldly goals. The understanding that such an energy can be attuned to and assimilated for the knowledge to guide our every task can come from burning the personal ownership of success or failure in the work. A yoga or union with our higher consciousness is strongly suggested in this chapter. This takes trust, faith in something unknown or unseen, and single-pointed willingness to follow guidance that comes from a space which is outside of the familiar mental space that most work from.